be more forgivable if this was to be released as a handheld title. The game uses a hybrid 3D/anime style to good effect, but there's a bit too much baby pastel colouring for my taste.
I usually focus on the middle area of the map while playing Jarryd because of the multiple ways to approach the enemy base and the different strategies I can employ which keep each game fresh.
Someone gives you a card with a bunch of random letters on it. They're a part of a secret organization that you haven't heard of. Later, someone gives you a card with a bunch of holes cut out of it. You can use this to decrypt the letter.
Hello and welcome to Worldwide Gaming. I'm your host Ryan. Today, Jarryd is reviewing the Japanese indie hack and slash Croixleur Sigma. Hicham has a WG101 on the block building and destroying FPS Block and Load. And lastly, Eli will be taking us through Lucas Pope's indie mega hit Papers, Please. But before that, like always, we have the forecast.
Finally, it's another Worms game. Worms WMD will return to the roots of the franchise, coming back to the classic 2D formula, with a host of new features like vehicles, a new graphic style, and building interiors. It's releasing early 2016 for PC and Xbox One. From the publishers of Minecraft comes the platforming shooter Cobalt. The game is currently in public alpha and already feels fluid and fun to play. The full game will have a complete story mode, co-op, and survival when it releases later this year. Create giant robots and try and survive in the upcoming Goliath. Goliath has players building giant robotic Goliath suits which they use to battle the giant monsters that roam the procedurally generated landscape in the co-op campaign. It's coming out next year for PC.
Now in the darkest jungle, far as you could see, there lives a thing.
Japanese hack and slash goodness, like we've seen many times before. What little story there is in Croixleur Sigma follows two childhood friends, Lucrezia and Francesca. They represent two factions that are competing against each other in a trial to decide which faction will control military and political authority, and more importantly, who will protect the Queen. The girls must put aside their friendship and undergo a trial where there can be only one winner. While the story might sound like it has some weight, it's really just tacked on to give you some context for why you're doing what you're doing. It's there, but you can safely ignore it because you're not missing anything by skipping it. Story mode in Croixleur is at its core a time trial based hack and slash, very reminiscent of Devil May Cry's Bloody Palace mode. Basically you kill the enemies on the floor or sky and proceed to the next floor within a 15-minute time limit. The low time limit is a double-edged sword. It's great to sit down and mash out a playthrough if you've got a spare bit of time, but if you can make it through to the end, you've literally seen almost everything the game has to offer in that 15 minutes. A little more variety to the floors would have helped immensely in making continuous playthroughs a bit more interesting. The game features additional modes, including Time Attack, which sees you battling it out on a single floor for the highest score, Survival, which has you last as long as you can before succumbing to the might of your enemies, and Challenge Mode, which sets tasks for you to complete that get progressively harder. While these modes do nothing that we haven't seen before in other titles, they are nonetheless kind of expected in a game of this type, and they'll be of most interest to those of you who like arcade-style hack and slashes. Over the years, we've come to expect some pretty solid and snappy combat systems in our hack and slashes. Croixleur surprisingly handles itself quite well in that regard. While the chain combos are nowhere near as impressive as something like the DMC franchise, it's competent and has all the required movesets from special moves the dashing which gives you a few of those oh-so-sweet invincibility frames. I really only have two complaints here. The first is that sometimes the animations for stuff like dashing or specials feel really rigid, but once you're in the midst of a battle with an onslaught of enemies, you kind of forget about it. The second is double mapped or dual function buttons to do certain special moves. In my case, I hold down a bumper then press one of the face buttons on my controller, but sometimes it doesn't register and you can end up wasting precious invincible moves that are better left for moments of real need or panic. Croixleur features a weapons unlock system. The weapons are varied with different damage values assigned and a nice skin to go with them, and each individual weapon you can unlock has its own special attack, even if some of these special attacks are quite similar. These unlocks are really the only thing that divides the two characters, as there is no discernible difference between the way they fight beyond the special abilities of the weapons they carry. I feel like they've missed an opportunity to inject a bit more variety here, and it would have been nice to see some sort of trade-off between the two characters, perhaps one being strong or faster and vice versa. The variety of enemies is a bit of a disappointment also. If you don't count palette swaps, I've counted about 5 different enemies in total with varying amounts of damage they deal and take. The lack of variety in many aspects of the game leave me feeling like this was a title designed for a handheld console like the Vita, yet strangely it's a PC-only release. I don't know if it's just me, but the limited number of weapons and enemies would be more forgivable if this was to be released as a handheld title. The game uses a hybrid 3D/anime style to good effect, but there's a bit too much baby pastel colouring for my tastes. It also runs at a decent frame rate, which is pretty much mandatory for any game requiring frame-perfect actions. The sound is also fairly disposable, with your usual assortment of anime-esque sound effects to signify exertion and pain. Croixleur has 2 difficulty levels, easy and normal. Easy is probably a little too easy, especially in comparison to normal. Having said that, normal's also not that hard once you know what you're doing, especially if you're one of those talented few that can pull off endless SSS combos in games like DMC. There are leaderboards though, so if you enjoy seeing your name in lights, you might get some extra enjoyment out of this. Ditto if you're the kind of person who enjoys mastering a game to achieve 1 credit clears or no damage runs. Croixleur Sigma won't be for everyone. It takes a particular kind of person to enjoy repeating the same 15 minutes of gameplay over and over again, but if that particular kind of person is you, you could do a lot worse than this game. The current asking price on Steam is pretty much perfect, and what it does extremely well. It's simple to pick up, but difficult to master, and with a few unlocks thrown in, you'll get your money's worth. Having said that, if the art style doesn't appeal to you, you may be better off picking up another title.